And we're live.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another rendition of Bergflow's Pivot Ready Live. I'm Wesley on the servicing side of Bergflow, and we joined today with Amy on the operations side. If you haven't been listening to us for the last couple of weeks, we'd encourage you to go to our Facebook page. All our previous episodes are on there. We started with identifying what a service business is, what the structure of it is, and then we're diving a little bit deeper in. So last week we covered what actually sits in the servicing division. And then today we're very blessed to be able to talk about operations. You know, what does it mean? What is operations? What does it look like? What lives in the operations world? So I'm going to be interviewing Amy. We do encourage you guys to please post your comments or questions in the Facebook live chat. We'd love to hear from you guys if you have any specific questions. So without ado, I'm going to jump in. Amy, what is a good way for us to articulate what is operations? I consult with a lot of companies, and then they say to me, well, if it's not servicing where we actually transact our services, you know, home inspection or power cleaning or manufacturing or something like that, and it's not getting a new client, which is growth, everything else must be operations. So how true is that as a statement?
I think that's pretty accurate. I think it's very difficult to articulate operations sometimes because it is all encompassing. For example, growth might be responsible for running your funnel, but operations might be responsible for building the technology that runs the funnel. So it touches a little bit of everything and is directly responsible for probably less than people think, which makes it a little bit ethereal and a little bit difficult to define the true operations division. I think it's really easy oftentimes to define individual tasks that fall in operations, but to see the bigger vision and picture of the operations division becomes a little bit more difficult. But I think the way you said it is probably as good as it comes.
So you brought up an interesting point. If you say operations, the vision for operations, you know, I have to have a vision of what my operations division looks like. I've heard a lot of companies say, well, I meet with my CPA once a week and I look at my P&L statement when it comes in. So, you know, and my wife runs the, you know, our wages at night. So outside of that, I think I've got operations covered. Would you agree with that?
I think that comes back to the tasks. Like if you have the task covered, that's great. I think the vision of operations oftentimes directly coincides with the vision of the company. So if the vision of the company is to grow, then obviously we're all trying to grow, but growth might think we're growing this way and services might think we should do it that way. And operations kind of comes in and pulls all the pieces together and implements. So I know you use the analogy of air game and ground game a lot. For me, as the operations leader, my sole job is to float between the two constantly. So it's like seeing the air game and understanding the vision, the mission, the goals of the company, but then actually getting down into the details and how are we executing in order to achieve those things as well.
So with that, let's talk a little bit about what's the mission. What is the objective of having an operations division? So I've got a slide that I'll share and we can go through it. So when we deal with clients and we go through, you know, helping them articulate some of these things, is can you see my shared screen? Is it up? There we go. There we go. So when we talk about the mission of an operations division, it is to maximize the efficiency and profitability and minimize risk. A lot of companies are heavy around risk mitigation. Well, we just can't take any risks. Let's just make sure that we don't go into any risk. And that's fine. There's risk avoidance and then there's risk mitigation. So risk avoidance, you're never going to grow if you're always in risk avoidance space. The growth person or the growth division, and the person that leads the growth division normally are very ambitious, big strides. Let's go out and conquer the world and do all these things. And operations is a little bit more of a reality check. It's like, okay, cool. It's great that you want to, take over the world. Let's first just count how many soldiers we have. Let's start there. So maximizing the efficiency, that refers for me to the human efficiency. What is our capacity around human efficiency? The same way that operations people will look at the financial side of the business and make sure, hey, we're not overspending, we've got enough cash flow, and that type of stuff. And we'll go a little bit into the financial side in a minute, but also minimizing the risk, making sure some of those decisions are made correctly. Business owners often go out and they say, hey, let's do this. But once you start growing a business, you don't, as a business owner, don't necessarily always have the time to dive into those minutiae details of the finances. What's my bills receivable? What's my bills payable? How much is outstanding on my debtors book? Who needs to be invoiced? Who doesn't need to be invoiced? For me, those are all tasks and functions that lives within the operations division. And I've seen a lot of companies kind of share or divvy that out between other divisions. Growth, just the service division does a little bit of growth, or the growth division does a little bit of servicing, and being able to, I was just talking to somebody as a service leader, and I said, you have to build the sandbox for them to exist in, because the only way that you know that it doesn't fit is by taking everything out and say, okay, what actually fits in here? Then you're left with all these pieces and say, okay, well, where do they belong? And most service-based companies are very heavy on the servicing side. Most of the resources will be there, human and capital. So they kind of end up filtering some of these tasks into the servicing division. Well, all I need you to do is just do some invoicing after the job's done. Well, I just need you to follow up with a client that hasn't paid. And that's fine if you're a small, chuck in a truck type of business. You can wear all those hats. But if you're truly building out the service division for scalability, like we covered last week, is you need somebody else to go behind you and say, we've done the work. I don't have time to go and chase, bills receivable. Somebody needs to go and collect the money. We've done the work. There needs to be a system built around that. And is the system, hey, you have to pay us on site? Oh, I forgot to send this invoice, that type of stuff. So that's what operations for me does really well, is they look at it and say, okay, when we talk about risk mitigation, is how can we build a system that prevents loss of income to show up?
So I told somebody the other day on one of our teams, when I show up, I feel like there's like this big dark cloud behind me, because like I show up at a meeting and it's just like Amy's going to nitpick everything that's wrong with what we're doing. But it's the epitome of this. Like, I show up as, okay, I'm going to poke as many holes in what we're doing as possible, because one, I'm trying to maximize efficiency, and two, I'm trying to mitigate risk. Where are we missing? Where are we succeeding? Where can we automate this? Or where do we need to touch clients better? Like it's just a role of like analyzing and finding all of those things that we can improve on to make the entire system, meaning customer, from the time they enter our world to the time they're done dealing with us, how can I make that as great of an experience for them and as smooth as possible for you as a service person, to say, like, you don't have to stress. You show up, you do your job, you move on to the next customer, and everyone's happy.
And I think you bring up a very important point, is, when I rely on you as the operations person in the business, is my expectation of the person in an operations role is look at something and say, okay, this works and this doesn't work. And it's not like, okay, it works, check, we don't have to worry about it. For me, the most important question around that is, why does it work? That's where the human efficiency or the efficiency comes in, is maximizing the efficiency. Well, this works because you're doing all the work. And how do we build this where it works independent of you, where it actually succeeds because of a system? Because if I'm going to grow my business, I'm going to hire more people, and I can't clone or unicorn the people that I have and expect more of them to show up. So how do I build a system around something that works? And we don't want to break stuff that works, but we also want to be able to analyze it and say it works because of this reason. And then you go to the risk avoidance side and say, okay, well, what doesn't work? What is causing some of these leaks in the boat? What is not functioning? And for me, it requires a very strategic discussion around what that profile looks like. What type of person naturally is good at that? So, I mean, it's on the screen. It's somebody that is stable but driven. So I remember during your interview process, one of the things that was key for us as leadership in the business is somebody that is stable. There's something that you do personally that for us ticks that box around stability. And I'll mention some of them. You're very strict and disciplined around your training and eating regime. Those are key aspects. So it's something personal, but it's something that we know this is inherent in this person. We can use it. I know that you're good on the financial side. You're very structured around your savings and investments and stuff like that as well. So again,
you mean I'm just cheap? That's what you're trying to say.
No. You're good at having. I mean, I know that you're saving towards certain things, and you've got certain things in mind that you want to achieve. And how if you've got debt, this is how I want to deal with debt. Hey, I want to buy another car. This is how I'm going to do it. And that's the key attributes that we can't teach people. That's what you've got to find during the hiring process. So when we look at the first line item there that says stable but driven, is somebody that is on an upward trajectory, but they have the stability built into them to say, I'm going to succeed time and time and time again. And humans are creatures of habit. We can't teach you new tricks. So we've got to take the things that you're naturally good at, which is being stable and driven, and say, okay, well, how do we apply these? What are these natural strengths that we're bringing in?
I think too, there's a really key, there's a key in this that we often overlook. And to your point that you started off with of like, hey, yeah, we have somebody doing the books, we have somebody running payroll, we have somebody doing these tasks. Oftentimes, somebody who is operational can lean more towards the stable side of it. They're very detail oriented, they're very task driven, they're very in line, and they're very process driven. Those type of people don't necessarily equate to an operational key leader, because that doesn't default to the driven piece of it.
Yes.
When you're talking about a key leader in your operations, to me, being driven, whatever that looks like in your company. Now, our CEO is fast moving, and I have the ability to match him. It doesn't always have to be quite that driven, but whatever it looks like to match you as a CEO, you can't negate the fact that they have to also be driven, because you have to remember that this key leader is what's driving your company. Your services has a whole different responsibility. Your growth has a whole different responsibility, but the overall company, this is the person that's second in line to you that's pushing forward all the time.
And again, I think that's a great way of articulating it as somebody that has a 180-degree vision. It's not just, hey, I'm just focusing on. So for me, it's very easy. because I'm only focusing on servicing. Yes, I wear other hats in the company, and it's because we still need to find those people, or the business is expanding and we've got new needs and we don't have somebody in that role particularly. But my lane is very clear. It's, I literally just look ahead of me on the servicing side. It's very easy to distinguish what it is that I do. On the operational side is you need a little bit more of a 180-degree view to say, okay, I need to push all of this. I need to balance servicing with growth, and I need to balance our growth with our serviceability on a capacity side. So, that brings me, we spoke about somebody that's financially savvy and responsible. You mentioned somebody that's a chaos manager. Entrepreneurs generally are great creators of chaos, which is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing because it keeps them under that ceiling of breakthrough. Because every time it looks like they're going to break through, it's like, well, wait, we need to circle back, create some more chaos. So chaos kind of keeps them arrested under that ceiling all the time. And I've seen this in a lot of companies.
So I think there's two extremes, and this is quite personal to maybe our situation, but somebody who's entrepreneurial, the very definition of that is like they do it themselves, right? So a lot of times the hardest thing for them to break is like, hey, you're not responsible for doing everything yourself. On the flip side of that, for me, like the easiest answer possible is, hey, can we just automate our whole life and I don't have to do any of it? And so balancing those two things is where the chaos gets managed, of like, it is not responsible for one person. You said it earlier. Is it scalable? Because if you're the only person doing it, it's not scalable. How do we scale it? We add automation. But if we're doing everything automated, then the customers probably aren't getting serviced the way they need to be serviced. So finding the balance between that chaos of the entrepreneurial mindset and somebody who's like truly, operational, like how much of it can we just make happen automatically?
Yeah, and again, I think I've seen this firsthand with a lot of business owners is they have this entrepreneurial flair, and they like positioning themselves to say, hey, if we do this, we're going to break through. And then a week later, they're like, hey, if we position ourselves this way, we break through. And then you have a repeat that rinse and repeat mindset of let's just position ourselves correctly. And you never get to that breakthrough point, because part of that entrepreneurial thing is, hey, let's just break down everything and rebuild it the correct way. So you're rebuilding stuff. And I think that's where the leaning on the operations person that is able to stand their ground on key decisions. A prime example, we had a management meeting earlier this month here in Dallas, where I live. And we as a leadership made some decisions. And then a week later, we were exposed to the exact same thing. It's like, hey, let's break this down and do it. It's like, no. We parked this. We're actually doing this. And, both Dirk and I had to like, oh, yeah, that's right. We forgot that we parked this, So it's very exciting to talk about, air game conversations. It's very exciting to talk about, hey, let's position ourselves, because you're constantly getting new information and thinking, if I just position myself correctly, the breakthrough is going to come. And it's going to come through building systems that's repeatable so that you can stack on top of that. That's and ultimately how you're going to do that. Talk to me a little bit about watcher of KPIs. Are you the be all and end all of KPIs of the business? What KPIs do you refer to on the operations division?
Well, I think the watcher of KPIs goes hand in hand with the ability to stand your ground, because ultimately it just becomes the operations person is kind of the accountability referee in the company. And it's not from a place of like, I just want to be the bad person. It's from a place of that air game, ground game, in between kind of aspect of like, okay, I know what the vision is. I'm super clear on the vision. I know what Wesley's division and what his vision in his division is. I know what growth's vision is. I'm seeing how all of these pieces are coming together. And if Wesley decides to change course, that's going to throw off everybody else. And so it becomes like, okay, no, we've agreed on this. Now somebody has to just stand firm on the line so that everyone is successful. And operations just kind of becomes that central hub. As far as KPIs go, it's very hard to measure that from an operational standpoint, because a lot of times what we do is not measured by the numbers. I mean, unless you tell me, hey, you need to build 12 systems this month, like, it's hard to put numbers to operations. But I heard one time, and I've kind of just adopted this strategy, the KPIs for the operations division are the KPIs for the company. And if the company's not matching their KPIs, then the operations division isn't being successful as well.
Yeah. So, and again, my take on that is operations KPIs becomes what are the rocks? What are those key milestones for this quarter, for this goal? So for this year, stretching ahead a little bit to next week on the growth conversation is I see this a lot on the growth side is, people say, well, I want to grow the business. Let's build some great marketing strategy. And then everything points to the marketing strategy and then doesn't work. And then you break it down. It's like, hey, let's do a referral program. And then you build everything. So you're constantly in building something to support a growth activity, as opposed to saying, this is the business model that we're running. Growth just needs to add to that. And again, I think a lot of people kind of become held hostage around, well, now we're just doing marketing, or now we're just doing, pamphlets or door knocking or, B2B or something like that. And for me, that's where the operations person steps in and say, hey, we still need to hit these targets. This is the fourth rendition of us of rebuilding our growth strategy. And obviously we can't repeat the cycle because we're sacrificing it on the business. So skipping ahead a little bit, if we talking about, the structure of the operations division, I'm very clear, and I'm very fortunate because I live in this world. And when I talk to other operations people, they're like, well, I just need them to do what they do and tell me when to build them. And that's a very lag measure reactive mindset. For me, operations is a lot more proactive in its function. It's not reactive, because you've got to be able to go to the service division. And I just had this conversation is, what is your service capacity? And if you know that, hey, we can do 10 jobs a week and we're currently running at 50%. Yes, you can ask your service division to help upsell, but you actually need to, who's the person responsible for bringing in the new thing, the new client, the new deal? And if you're asking your service division to service at the highest level and also keep themselves busy, it kind of allows the growth to kind of weigh out here. And I see this a lot. I mean, we were just on a call with a group of businesses, and we actually split into the three rooms. Everybody jumped into the growth room. Why? Because I think a lot of companies actually don't understand what actually sits in growth. So I don't want to talk about growth, but for me, it's the operational relationship of supporting services and supporting growth. And it's like, hey, growth, this is what I need from you. What are you promising? What is your obligation? Well, we're going to deliver 10 transactions a week. All right, cool. Service division, do you have the team? Do you have the resources? I've got to manage the cash flow. I've got to manage the resources. And again, it creates and maintains the organizational budget. That's a big thing for us, is not running your business purely off a P&L statement. That's great if you can see what the hell happened to your money 2 months ago, but you're not spending 2 months ago's money. You're spending this week's money. And one of the exercises that I trying to help clients with is actually look at the total sales cycle of your business, and where does servicing sit in that sales cycle. So if you had to say, let's take a 4-week average, right? It takes about 4 weeks for us to do 4 days, 4 weeks. It's the same mindset as week 1 of the 4 weeks, we're prospecting. Week 2, we're now doing transactions where they're actually paying us or signing the agreement to come and do the work. Work 3 is scheduling. Week 4 is the actual service delivery. So every week, those tasks move on. I'm only working on stuff that growth has solved, whether it's 4 days ago or 4 weeks ago. I need to make sure that I can operate in that space. And I think because a lot of people, just like their P&L, they live reactively. It's like, oh, we've got capacity next week. Let's all focus on growth. Oh, crap, we don't have enough technicians. Let's everybody go jump back into the field and do the work. So for me, the way that we overcome that is, as a service leader, I lean on you as the operations person to say, okay, what can be designed, built, support the model, systems, process that delivers continuity at scale? Because we can transact today. If I've got capacity today to go clean someone's roof or fix their plumbing, that's fine. But what am I doing for tomorrow? So for me, the operational role is helping growth get ahead of themselves a little bit by saying, what are you working on that we're going to deliver 2 weeks from now? Ultimately, servicing is what your business gets known for, but growth is what promises. It's up to me to deliver whatever growth is promised.
So I think it's really important here to mention that 2 things. When you're talking about operations as a division, yes, a lot of the financials live within it. It does not mean necessarily that your key operations person is doing that. We outsource our bookkeeping, we outsource our taxes, we outsource a lot of things, but it becomes my responsibility to oversee all of those pieces. Again, it's just managing the pieces of the company. But the other thing here is, if you don't have an operations leader in your company currently, a lot of times people talk a lot about the money aspect of it. And I think, 1, because it's a tangible thing, and 2, everybody knows the money happens. Like, everybody knows that we need to track how much is in our bank account, or we're not going to be able to swipe the debit card, right? But at the same time, it's the hardest thing a lot of times for CEOs to give up, because it's trust. And so, 1, you don't have to just hand all of your money over to somebody the day you hire them. Like, you have to build a high level of trust with somebody. And in all of the things that an operations leader does for you, money can be the last thing that they take from you. But ultimately, that's also speaking to the level of trust that you should have with your operations leader, because you are handing them their money in an ideal world, and you're saying, run my business and make sure you don't bankrupt me. And as an operations leader, that's a really important task. If I tell Leslie he can go spend $1 million, that's on nobody but me. And so there is a high level of trust and a high level of responsibility that comes along with this role. And that comes back to, you're not just hiring a task-oriented, I'm going to check the things off the list person to fill this key leader role. That doesn't mean you can't have those kind of people inside your company at a certain level. But when it comes to the key leader role, you have to have somebody that you can trust at a very high level, that can see the bigger picture, that can balance all the pieces, and that can withstand that level of responsibility, stress, pressure, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is, we're keen advocates of divisional budgets, and I can build a divisional budget, but as a divisional leader, I'm going to be very selfish to say, hey, I want the lion's share of it, because I'm the client-facing side of the business. And a lot of when the CEO kind of lives in all 3 of those roles himself, like you can kind of see it in their divisional budget allocation as well. They tend to overpay their first technician. They spend a lot of money on the servicing side, making sure that they retain their technicians. But for me, the operations person is saying, hey, we need to set parameters to all these things. And I think that's, for me, where maintaining the financial systems and tracking the KPIs. KPIs, a lot of people are saying, well, It's just how many appointments do we need to schedule? That's one. But the other thing is, another KPI is, hey, Wesley, you're running your division at 60% of our, cost of services. We actually need you to bring it down to 55. So what are the things that you're going to do to bring it down by 5%? Because one, we want to increase our profitability, but two, we also need to allocate more money to growth. So I need you to find a way to streamline your division. For me, that's the operations person. And again, to the last point on here, it says the overall health of the organization report to the CEO. That's the stuff you're going to report to the CEO. Hey, we're at 60% on the servicing side. Our plan is to shave 2 to 3% of this quarter. Our aim is a year from now to be at 47%. We can make those decisions on paper, but there's a real world implementation of that. And that's where the operation and services work together to say, how can we do this? And the same is true on the growth side. It's easy to say, well, let's just throw 10 grand against the wall and see which clients, buy our product. It's like, no. What is the return on investment? Because you're asking me to get the service division in line, and we've got no KPIs around the return on investment. So return on investment is a KPI.
Yes.
And that's, when we talk about KPIs, people think it's easy. It's the stuff that they understand. Oh, I've got so many deals. I've got so many of this. It's like, okay, what is your return on investment? That's a KPI. Are you hitting the target for your KPI? So for me, my return on investment, as I said, divisionally is 60%. We want to get it down to 50%. What are you doing to move it closer to that? Or am I just saying, well, the market's changed. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. And then let's talk a little bit about those things. What are the key results and performance indicators for somebody that is in an operational role? So you can lead the way on this.
Well, and I think we've talked about a lot of these, growth goals, just helping measure those key performance indicators, financial metrics. We talked a lot about. I think here's one thing I will say: the human metrics, human systems well-being. There's a level of, I don't really want to say it this way, but for lack of a better way, like taking advantage of people that happens in small businesses, because the CEO has the ability to go say, how are you doing? But the reality of it is, if the CEO is walking out to your pool service person and they're saying, how are you doing today? Are they getting a true answer? And does the CEO remember the last time that they gave them a review, for example? There's a lot of things that when you're at a smaller scale, and human resources tends to be like writing paychecks, that you forget to take care of your people. And at the end of the day, the only reason you have key leaders is to grow your company and to grow your teams and to invest in people. And so taking care of your people is a huge thing that tends to get overlooked at a smaller company level. And so having somebody who is aware of that, even if Wesley's birthday present may have showed up 3 weeks late, Wesley still got a birthday present from the company that, was personalized and individualized. And like, it was just a matter of, I'm sure Dirk told him happy birthday. I hope I told him happy birthday, but like the company told him happy birthday also. And that's a really important thing that I feel like tends to get overlooked when we talk about this. We talk about the obvious. We talk about financials. We talk about KPIs, but we can't forget about the whole reason is the people also.
I think that's about it. And again, this is true for each division, but the question is who looks at this at a company level, and it is who looks at the human metrics of the business. It's the operations person. These slides, it says it works with the growth leader. Why? Because we need to understand the growth trends. And it works with the service leader. It's the only one that works with both, because they both rely on the operations, the division, to kind of balance those two. And I keep referring to that. One of the things I want to point out is a lot of businesses, they have goals and these aspirations. And if I had to come to a business today and like, hey, how big is your? No, we're a $2.5 million business. I'm like, great. How profitable are you? Around 30, 35%. I'm like, really? Are you really 35% profitable? Show me. Well, I actually don't take a salary out of the business. And you know what? My wife does operations. And I'm like, well, firstly, you don't have a fully loaded P&L in your business. You don't fully know what your profit margin is. And secondly, if you're not identifying what is your profit, how much money are you reinvesting back in your business? That for me, that's a key indicator of success in business is, can you say, hey, I've got $1 million business. Am I just leaving all the money on the table to keep the business afloat? That just means that you're running $1 million business, but you don't really understand how profitable your business is. So being able to have targets around budget, revenue, expenses, profit. I know some of the things that you did when you joined is you kind of went through that in order. We've got a very specific budget model that we run, and it's not a budget that reports on the P&L. It's a budget to say we're only allowing so much to be spent. Because like any small business, it's true for most people as well. We've got 15 different subscriptions to some streaming television thing, and your business will have the same things. You'll have software that you don't need. You'll have tools that you've purchased. People will go to trade shows and buy stuff that they never need. And if the business owner doesn't have an accountability partner around the finances in the business, it's easy. I mean, we've seen this. Business owners go out and they swipe a credit card for $5,000, and we're like, dude, you just spend all the working capital for the week on this. Oh, that was a private thing. I'll sort it out at the end of the month. It's like, no. It's actually working capital that we needed this week. And a lot of business owners that live out of the business, that don't have a salary or a set budget, around expenses and stuff like that, it's easy for stuff like that to go through the wash. Then you get to the point, it's like, well, my business is actually not 35% profitable. It's actually 1% profitable because I'm drawing 34% of the income through all my expense habits in the business.
So I'm going to flip that around too, because when I look at the books, monthly or weekly or whatever I'm doing, and if our books are not in order and I see that, hey, like we're going to run short on cash this month, we're going to need more cash, then I know that cash has to come out of the owner's account. So one of my responsibilities is to protect the owner's paycheck. Because I know that if we're not on track, I'm not making up that difference. It's not coming out of my paycheck. I shouldn't care, but it's coming out of their paycheck. And that's my responsibility to protect their paycheck as much as I'm protecting my own paycheck. And so whether it's an actual paycheck or, to your point, whether they're living out of their business, I'm the person who's looking out for them when they're looking out for all of the other employees.
And to that point, I think the way that we do that is distinguishing between what is the business and what are you and your personal capacity as a business owner. So that's having a target around profit versus, hey, we're just running a big ticket office. The revenue is a lot. And then whatever is short will, the owner just kind of lives out of the business. So, if you want to position your business for sale, if you want to position your business for mergers and acquisitions or anything like that, or a line of credit with a bank, we know that it's hard for businesses to go to the bank and say, I'm running a 30% profitability because I'm actually living out the business. If you came to me today and say, hey, Wesley, I want to buy your business, I'm like, well, the books is showing 1%, but it's actually 35%. And I mean, each to his own. Every guy can run his house like he wants. It makes it difficult for me as a divisional leader to say, okay, what is my budget for next year? Because growth is saying we're bringing on an extra $1 million worth of sales. Well, I need to build out the service team that can honor $1 million worth of sales. And if we're just going to be reactive and say, hey, we'll hire them, it's like, well, I can't just open my mailbox and the talented person is going to be there. I've got to start the interview process now. I have to have conversations with real people that says at some point we're going to come work for you. So I need to know when that budget's going to be available so that I can do that. I can't just one day, open a career page and somebody's resume is going to be there. I'm like, hey, perfect person, they're going to take us through that. You have to, when you identify talent, you've got to be able to hold on to them and be realistic. And for me, that's where profit and budget and that type of stuff. And you can have divisional ones, but the owner never really focuses on that a lot. And I say that in jest because every single business owner that I speak to, I say, hey, how's it going in your business? Well, I had a look at my P&L statement from my bookkeeper. I'm like, great. What does that tell you? No, we're about $1 million company. I'm like, okay, what do you want to be in 2 years? No, I want to be a $5 million company. So how much are you spending on growth? No, about 10 grand a month. And so the moment you go into generalities, the returns are going to be general. So if you say, I want to go from $1 million to 5 million, you have to be very specific to say, hey, operations person, how much am I spending on growth? What is my cost of acquisition for clients? Because if it is 10% of my revenue, well, if I want to increase my revenue, I know exactly how much it's going to cost for me to increase my business. And either I'm going to invest capital back into the business, or I'm going to have to look at my business and say, where can I get that? I mean, I spoke to a business owner this morning. This person consumes 40% of the revenue that they generate in a business, but they actually just self-employed. Because 40% of the revenue they actually take as a paycheck. And I'm like, well, firstly, there's no transfer of skill. A lot of that is built around relationship. So your value, the equitable value of your business is greatly diminished because nobody else is going to take over those relationships, and you're going to get to the end of this cliff and your income's just going to drop off. Or you're going to be 78 and still working because you kind of have to work on these relationships that pays your high ticket items. So a lot of what we do is actually helping clients go through those conversations, restructuring that. There's times where I've asked you to, hey, jump into a conversation with a client. Let's have a look at their operational structure. I don't have the answer. I know what questions to ask, but I might not have the direct answers like you have. So in that vein, we're happy to connect with you guys. We would love to spend some time with you guys. Amy will you can reach out to us at contact@bergflow.com. We'd love to hear from you guys. What are you challenging in your industry? What are you some of the stuff that we've shared, does it resonate with you? Do you have any questions around that? Yes, I will answer the question now. Your business is unique and you are the only one facing that problem. I know.
What do you mean? I'm special.
Yeah. So every business owner that I speak to say, yes, I know, but my business is you don't understand. And I'm like, a service-based business operates the same. It's services, operations, and growth. What you've done is you've convoluted it so much that nothing is distinguishable from anything. So for you to put your foot on the gas, there's not a single pedal that says, if I do this, I get more gas. Because if I stomp on the gas, my service cost goes up because I'm actually carrying some of my growth cost in my servicing division. So people are kind of held hostage, as I said earlier, because of how they built the structure. They lean so heavily on divvying out tasks across divisions that it's not very clear for them to say, this is how I grow my business. This is how I improve my quality. This is how to claim my profits. None of that stuff's easy. So we would love to connect with you guys. You can reach us at contact@bergflow.com. You can also schedule a strategy session with us. We'd gladly go through your business and walk through with you guys, see where you are, what are some of the bottlenecks that your business is experiencing. Anything else that I missed, Amy?
No, I don't think so. I think just, you hold value from these live sessions, make sure you like or share them so that we know. And if you have any questions at any point in time, even if you're watching this retroactively, like leave them on Facebook or YouTube or wherever you're watching it. We always try to jump in and answer them as we see them as well.
Perfect. Thank you guys for listening to us. Next week, Dirk will actually be on here. So we'll be having conversations around growth. What actually should live in your growth division? What does growth look like? What should not live in your growth division? And what are some of the strategic tactics that you can employ in your growth division? What are some of the pitfalls? What are some of the things that we see companies do over and over? We consult with hundreds of companies. And we see a lot of these patterns where they repeat the same mistakes. And we would gladly share those with you guys. So if you want to reach out to us, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, just join us next week. Same time, same place. Amy, thanks for hosting today. Always a pleasure spending time with you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks.